just while we wait for Ari to show up. You
Yeah.
want to go? You want to go first, Brittany?
Sure. Oh, you're here.
Yeah, I can
Oh.
I was just like,
Oh my gosh, I can't hear you.
Well, nice to meet you. Maybe you do your introduction first. You're the special guest.
Oh boy, thanks. Okay, so my name is Ari. I use she, her pronouns, and right now I'm a software engineer at Nordstrom on their machine learning platform team. And my favorite color is gray.
Excellent. And my name is Brady. I'm a software engineer at Nordstrom Trunk Club. I used to only say Trunk Club, and now we're combined. I work on a lot on our front-end app. It's a customer-facing app on the process of making signing up as easy as possible. So from the moment marketing passes off the baton from like, oh, we got this person to start looking at our website, to this person has started to fill out their profile and go through the process of requesting their first trunk, like their first box of clothes. So that's a bit about me. Go ahead, Sam.
I'm Sam. If you go to my LinkedIn, it says Steven. So just to explain, my initials is SAM, and I don't know, my parents planned it like that. I go by Sam. They've never called me Steven in my life. And I'm a front-end engineer at Lyft. I work on internal tools, so if anything in the app doesn't work, don't blame it on me. I don't work on anything customer facing. I work in the mapping organization, so I build internal tools just to help. There's a lot of like data scientists that need to like visualize like some of the mapping data for like routing predictions and stuff like that. And just anyone in the mapping org, they can just request tools to help them do the job better, or to investigate. Lawyers use tools I build to investigate customer or driver complaints and stuff like that. So yeah, and I went to Dev Bootcamp a long time ago, 2013. So 7 years ago now, I went to Dev Bootcamp. And it's a little interesting because my background is, I also have a computer science degree, which is not normal for a lot of bootcamp graduates. I got my computer science degree a long time ago, and I gave up too easily when I was looking for a job. That's kind of why I started doing these talks, to tell people not to give up, because it's pretty tough, especially right now. I think the first time in 2002, I graduated during the dot-com bust, and I was in Hawaii. So I made two mistakes. I refused to leave Hawaii, which had no jobs. And I gave up too quickly. I gave up probably after like 6 months looking for a job, and just ended up working in the mortgage industry for years until that industry exploded. But yeah, now I'm back. I went to Dev Bootcamp 2013 and finally started breaking into the industry.
Yeah, I don't have all of that CS background, which I imagine some of it may have come back for you, Sam.
I forgot mostly everything. It was more than 10 years, and a lot of the things I learned was outdated. I couldn't really build anything after I graduated from the university. Like, I couldn't build an app after I graduated the university. After I graduated Dev Bootcamp, the day after I graduated, my team came second place in a hackathon, National Day of Civic Hacking. My whole team went drunk. We were still drunk from the night before. It was our graduation from Dev Bootcamp. And somehow we came in second place.
Amazing.
So, yeah, it's just different. Bootcamp is all practical, and you just build. It's way different from the university experience. at least the university I went to, and their curriculum is probably outdated too. So
I've heard that a lot from people, that you get a lot of theory and at a CS degree, but then at a boot camp, it's very practical, practicing making things.
Yeah, I think I had one web development class in the university, and we didn't really build too much.
Yeah, I took one computer science class in undergrad and I got a D. And I was like, okay, well, I'm never going to do this again.
I didn't understand anything I went through the whole first introduction to programming class and I didn't understand anything, and somehow I passed it. The light bulb didn't go on for me until like I took my second computer programming class.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. I'm like, what is these for loops and stuff like that? I didn't even know what was going on. But you want to start with the questions, Brady? There's one. And if you have more questions, post them in the Slido.
Yeah. I wish I could well, at this point, it's still visible up on that screen. So everyone try to open up that Slido. If you find the chat, it's the second message up from the bottom. And that's, I think, going to be the best way for us to keep track of questions, and people can upvote. So if there's a question you see that you really hope gets answered, with this number of people, I don't expect that to be an issue, but that'll help us make sure we answer the questions you all are excited to hear. And also, I'm just going to let you know, I apologize if there's yelling in the background. My sister's 3 kids are over here. We're starting to kind of incorporate our families after lots of social distancing and not being able to see my 2 nephews and niece. And today they're over here. So I think I hear nap time starting. So maybe we're lucking out with the timing on this. All right. So the question up here is, I'm a junior developer. I've developed several apps, have a well-written resume, and I've applied to over 300 applications and get rejected a lot.
That sucks. I know that feeling for sure. I think the fastest I ever got rejected for a job was 3 hours. I was like, damn. You didn't even read it.
A lot of companies have a algorithm, some kind of machine learning thing. So nobody sees it. It just goes through the algorithm and it just sends out a deny email.
Yeah. I feel like there's a few different angles with which to tackle this. I think when I first started applying for a ton of jobs, I wasn't really tailoring my resume to fit the actual job description. And there are a lot of tools that will help you sort of get past the things that you were talking about, like the automatic job scanner things. I use JobScan, and you can put in your resume, put in the type of role you're looking for, and it'll say oh, it looks like the job description has this, and this, and you don't have that in your resume, so you should put that in there. So I've started doing that, and it is a lot more work because you have to kind of move your resume around and shift it around quite a bit. But
what tool was that?
It's called JobScan. I think it's just jobscan.com or something like that. Let me check it. Jobscan.co.
What is the purpose of that site?
So it's when you know how you just said, when you submit a resume, nobody even looks at it. They just send it through some system that parses out the important keywords, and then it will either be yes, this person seems like a human deserves to read their resume, or no, let's just send them a rejection in 3 hours. So I've started passing my resume through JobScan along with the description of the role that I'm applying for, and then it'll say, oh, this wouldn't have made it through because you're missing 6 of the 10 requirements. And I'm I have those, but I just didn't phrase it in the right way, or they didn't pick up on it. So it's been really helpful to help me tailor my job descriptions. Something I started doing that is time consuming but I kind of have to do it, is I submit a cover letter with every application. There are some where they're we don't need one. So I'm okay, cool. I will not. But if there's an option to upload one, I do it. And that has increased the odds of me getting at least an initial phone screen a lot. Something else, on the other side of it, I've found that networking is really important. I had a final round interview at Microsoft last week, and the only reason I even got to that point was because I knew someone on LinkedIn, and so we had a conversation, and I said, oh, I really want to work at Microsoft, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, oh, let me talk to this person, this person, this person, send me the roles you want, blah, 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 blah. When I was in boot camp, I had something like 200 LinkedIn connections. And so my goal was like, I want to get 500 LinkedIn connections so that I can like really network and stuff. And so I'm way beyond that number now, but just having those connections made it a lot easier to find roles that I want. I use LinkedIn a lot. Even if I don't know somebody at the company, I'll just type in like software engineer Stripe. I did that one time and I found someone, he wasn't a software engineer at Stripe, he just worked there, but I messaged him and said, hey, I'm really interested in Stripe and I want to hear about your experience there. And he was like, come to the office. He introduced me to like an engineering manager. We had lunch. I got a t-shirt. So there's an aspect of kind of putting yourself out there that is hard, but is also extremely helpful. And having referrals or having connections has probably been the most important thing for me. Like I have an interview at Google next week, but I didn't even apply for that role. Somebody reached out to me and said, oh, hey, 2 different people have referred you to Google. And like, we think you'd be really a good fit for this role and blah, 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 blah. So there comes a point when you have enough connections or you've kind of garnered enough goodwill that you can, somebody else will kind of do that work for you. And that's been really nice. Something that I've sort of started to do is ask for feedback. A lot of larger companies won't give you that feedback, but I've been rejected from smaller companies where they're a lot more willing to say, we wish you had shown more strength in this area or this area or this area. So being willing to ask for feedback and being willing to take it has been really important too, because it's helped me figure out the areas where I need to practice a little bit more or the areas I need to highlight a lot more too. I hope that answered that question. And if it didn't, ask another question and I'll answer it. Okay. I don't really, do I just answer the ones that are upvoted the most? I guess I'll just answer.
Wait, we can, I got some tips too on that one. Brady can handle the questions with archiving it. She's got the admin controls. So yeah, I agree with everything. Also, networking is super important. I think it's almost impossible to like, if you're just code applying and not applying other strategies, the chances of you getting through, especially as a junior engineer, especially in this environment with everybody, like companies downsizing and stuff like that, it's going to be really, really hard to like get somebody to even look at your resume. Because there's so many people applying. You got to think like, somebody's got to review all those. So most people will run it through some machine learning algorithm to reduce the load. So you got to get past that. Then you got to get past the person that reviews it. And if they're just looking at a paper, they're probably just scan it for like 30 seconds if you're lucky. So it's tough. If you get lucky, maybe if something really stands out in your resume, then you get through that way. But you got to use multiple techniques. Networking is really good. Beefing up your LinkedIn, GitHub. One thing I recommend on GitHub, which a lot of people don't do for some reason, is pin the repositories that you want to show people. Like if you have projects that you're proud of, pin those repositories so those show up like when people go to your GitHub page. Like by default, I think GitHub just puts like 6 random projects on the top. I only pin 2 because I have 2 repositories that are public that have a bunch of stars on them actually. So that's one way. The other way you can meet people is just going to meetups. Right now, there's meetups like this, which are going virtual. You can start your own meetup like we just did. We've been doing these weekly just hangouts. And someone mentioned last week, like something about meetup. And I was like, oh yeah, I don't know why I didn't think of that. So now I made a meetup. And now I met all you people. And last week we met a bunch of people and the week before. So it's a good way to network and just meet people. And just share your code is another way to network. 100 Days of Code on Twitter, share your code on CodePen, Replit, Code Sandbox, anything. Anything you make, just make it and just share it. Who cares if it doesn't get likes or anything? Somebody might stumble upon it and think it's cool and maybe even build upon what you made. And lastly, for referrals, you can ask anybody for a referral. Just go on LinkedIn, just see LinkedIn tells you if you're connected to anybody at the company, even through a friend of a friend. Ask on every single social network. Just go ham. Just go Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Just ask people, does anybody know anybody at whatever company you like? People get compensated for referring people. So there's incentive. They'll refer you even if they don't know you. Sometimes they'll even invite you for lunch or whatever, which I did. Somebody I referred at Lyft, I didn't know them, but somebody else I was connected to on Facebook knew them, and they connected us. I invited them to lunch at Lyft. We had lunch, and then they ended up getting hired at Lyft, and I get a $5,000 bonus. So there's like huge incentive for me to make time out of my day to go and like meet this person, get to know them. I mean, I would still probably do it if there was an incentive, but that financial incentive is like people will want to help you even more. So, but if you don't ask, nobody's going to refer you. So just ask everybody. Don't be a pest about it. Don't like pester people every single day. Hey, can you send me a referral? Can you send me a referral? Because then they're going to just end up blocking you. But yeah, I guess that would be my tips. You have, that was kind of long, but
No, that was good. I forgot about one thing that's been really helpful. I've joined a lot of like affinity groups around like, you know, different like minorities in tech. If you're white, like, I don't know, sorry. But like there's like the National Society of Black Engineers, or like I'm in a group called Dev Color that's really just like a networking and sort of fellowship group for Black software engineers. And so even if people can't refer me, just having sort of a well of information and being able to ask for resume feedback is really helpful. Like Nesby did a virtual career fair a few weeks ago, and like Amazon was there, like all these big companies, Microsoft, the government. And that was a great way to just be like, here's my resume, 8 million people will see it. And a lot of companies are all into this like, you know, diversity and inclusion, blah, 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 blah. So that's a really good way to sort of get past the initial screen. So if you're like, if there's a lot of them, there's like Asian Pacific Islander, like Society of Engineers, like there's a ton, and you can definitely join them. I think through Nesby, it's like $30 for the whole year. So that's another really good resource. Check those out.
yeah, any type of organization. I know a lot of people after the boot camp went on to like volunteer for Girls Who Code and stuff like that, and then they keep going, and then they end up becoming like an organizer. And then now all the people who went that route, if you go and look at their history, they're all like, all the people, anecdotally, all the people I know now, they're all like doing super well, including our guest next week, who I just listed on the meetup. I haven't announced yet. Next week, we're going to have Paulette Luftig. I think that's how you say her name. She was my cohort mate at Dev Bootcamp, and she actually struggled in the bootcamp, but then she just didn't give up. You just got to not give up. And she just kept putting in work. And now she's the director of engineering at a company called Maven Link. And I think she, after Dev Bootcamp, volunteered for some Women Who Code or one of those groups. And yeah, and now she was like started as a junior engineer, moved her way up, became the engineering manager, and then now she's director of engineering, all in 7 years. Like in Silicon Valley, you can move up quickly. The hardest part is getting your foot in the door, which is the first step. And in order to get there, you got to just not give up, and you got to keep building your skills, building your network. As long as you keep building those two things, you're gonna move up quickly as soon as you get your foot in your door and you keep putting in work.
Yeah, I think if I could change one thing about the way that I've started my career, I think it would be just network more. I feel like I've done a decent job. Anytime somebody has reached out for me, I'm always more than happy to get coffee, especially if they're like a boot camp grad. But I definitely could have been more proactive about writing little thoughts that I'm having, letting people know on LinkedIn what I'm working on, because that's all part of the networking and makes it a little bit more likely that other people will reach out to me, and then makes it easier for me to reach out to other people, and they'll immediately have a sense of what I've been working on and kind of what I stand for.
Yeah. I don't want to beat this question to death. Literally last thing. So I know we talked a lot about like the technical side of all of this, but I've seen from people, I did Ada Developers Academy, should have said that. So for people in my cohort, they would be so technically sound, but on the behavioral aspects, I wouldn't want to work with them. And so there are people who will get all the way to a final round of an interview and technically they're solid, but then they get feedback that like your attitude kind of sucks, frankly. So that's something that I really try to think about. It's when people are interviewing you, it's not about if you can solve the question every time, or it's not all about that. They also want to see if you're somebody that they want to work with. And if you're not, it doesn't matter how good you are, you're not going to get that job.
Yeah, I would say that's even more important. People don't want to work with assholes, so they're checking for technical ability. They're checking to see if you're going to be able to vibe well with the team, if you can learn fast. And one really important thing that I've learned by doing a bunch of interviews is companies really, really like when you seem excited about the company. Like that can go a super long way. If you come in and you're like super excited, they're gonna want you to work there just based on your excitement. But yeah, also there's a podcast. I dropped it in. We have a Slack team, or I made a Slack team. I'll drop the invite link. I consume a lot of content every day, so I've been sharing just some content that I think is helpful for junior developers. I mean, the Slack may evolve into something else later on, but for right now, it's mostly geared towards junior developers. I dropped the podcast in there a couple weeks ago. It's the Syntax podcast by Wes Boss and I forget what the other guy's name is. Stolinsky, I forget what his first name is. They do a good podcast on web development, and they had Heather Payne on, and she gave a lot of good tips about for junior devs about the job hunt right now in this environment. So I recommend it. Was a good podcast.
Cool. Well, let's look at our next question, guys.
Good
everyone.
Okay. Oh wait, unless you wanted to do it.
Go for it. Go for it.
What is your day-to-day like as a software engineer at Nordstrom? Who, man, like 4 months ago, I would have had a completely different answer, but I guess I could answer, but well, nah, I'll do the coronavirus answer. So I've been working from home since the beginning of March, like before Nordstrom sent everyone home. I was like, I take the bus, so I'm not coming. So I've been working from home for a while. And I feel like it's really given me a lot of freedom to make my own hours, as it were. I'm more of a morning person, and after like 2:30, 3 o'clock, I'm useless. So I start working earlier than my teammates, and then I'm like, do not talk to me after like 3 o'clock. Don't meet me after 3 o'clock, unless it's like a team meeting. So I'm on the machine learning platform, and our mission is to enable self-service machine learning at scale. So basically what that means is we work really closely with data science teams to productionize models. They want to use a machine learning model in a certain application. We help them build it and we host it on the platform. So a lot of my day is sort of split in half with building new features for the platform and then also helping data scientists onboard their projects, existing projects onto our platform. Right now, we are working on a project to detect customer fraud at checkout. So, or like if they call customer service and say they didn't get their order, like we can use a lot of like past history and other features to determine whether or not they really didn't get it. So that involves building all of the things on the back end, like orchestration, making sure all of the SQL and tasks run in the particular order to train the model and score the model. And then it also involves working with data science to make sure that their use cases are being met by what we're building. And we do that sort of project-based approach. We have a backlog of things that we can pick up, but for the most part, we all sort of swarm on one project or two projects and sort of just move along that way. And the reason that is because with all of the coronavirus things changing, Nordstrom is really trying to focus more on their digital presence and less on the store stuff because they're all closed. So our priorities definitely have shifted since the beginning of March, mid-March. And I think that we'll just keep going on this project basis. So once this project is done, I think our deadline is, yikes, the end of next week. We'll move on to something else. And we do on-calls. I'm usually just the secondary on-call because I am newer. So what that means for me is anytime there's an incident, I'm not expected to be the one to fix it, but I am expected to know what happened or sync up with the primary person so they can explain like how they're going to fix the issue so that eventually I can just be a primary and I can just solve them myself.
And I wonder, I mean, I guess I'm a Nordstrom employee too, so I can also talk about my experience being a Nordstrom employee. My team is about like 10 people, and we have a designer and QA, and then a product manager, and then my manager, and then other engineers. And so every morning we'll start the day at like 9:30 my time. I'm based outside of Chicago, and we will do our daily stand, and then we'll have meetings in the morning if we have meetings for the day. Typically like Mondays and Fridays are pretty busy meeting days, and then we'll have other meetings trying to kind of catch up with what other feature teams are doing and make sure that we like one feature team might be really excited about getting started with some new technology like GraphQL has been growing in a couple of the feature teams. And so they're trying to help share that knowledge with us. So we'll get together and hear more about what other teams are doing. But then all days of the week, my second half of the day is just me working on whatever ticket it is that I'm working on. So also, we will focus on one project at a time. We have part of our 2-week sprint is to break down tickets and make sure that everyone is on the same page and knows what is expected for those tickets. And it's surprising sometimes. You think you understand what's being asked of you in the ticket, and then you sit down to actually do it, and you're like, oh, but now I have 8 other questions to answer. So Slack is always an option. But I am still grateful for such a culture of learning and sharing knowledge. So we are really encouraged to, whether it's in person or from a distance, be open to pairing with other people and talking through problems that way. There's a lot of collaboration in my day, even though I am a remote worker at this point. But I would say typically I can expect half of my day to actually be working on a ticket and coding. So if there's more questions, obviously follow up. And I don't think that Sam has experience working at Nordstrom, so we can, I guess, move to the next question. All right. So next one on this list says, how do you manage to keep in touch with technology stack changing every quarter? Are you really able to have a good command on any technology stack? And I'll let you two start with that while I do the.
Take it away, Sam.
For me, I try to focus on just learning the tools that I need at the present time, just because you tend to forget, like, or at least I do. I can't keep everything in my head. And then sometimes I'll learn something and then I'll never use it, which can be good because you learn different stuff in new technology and you can apply it to what you're working in. But I tend to focus on what I'm using. I'll play around with new technologies sometimes. Just like if there's a lot of hype on something, I just want to see what the hype is about and maybe I'll play around with it. But I subscribe to a lot of services. So I've been subscribed to Front End Masters for probably like 6 years, 7 years now. It's kind of expensive though. So if you don't have a job yet, there's ways to try and snaggle and try and get a free account or discount. Like you can just ask them, or if you went to a boot camp, ask your boot camp to ask Front End Masters, or Egghead is another one I really like. So I watch a lot of Front End Masters. What is that?
Just to build off of that, a lot of companies have education stipends.
So Lyft has free access to Udemy, so I can watch any like Udemy courses. Library card, a lot of times you can get free services. For San Francisco, you can get free Treehouse account, which I've had for free for I don't know how long, 5 years or something. I've done a ton of courses on Treehouse. And pro tip, you don't need to live in San Francisco to get a San Francisco library card. Anywhere in California, you can get a San Francisco library card. You get free lynda.com and Treehouse, I think, from San Francisco library card. And I think Treehouse partners with a lot of libraries, so you don't even have to be in California. I think you can just check with your library to see. And if they don't have it, just ask them, send them the information. I think Treehouse has like an informational page of how to collaborate with the library or something. I saw a link on LinkedIn recently about Treehouse partnering with libraries. So if something doesn't exist, just try and make it exist. You can like start moving the pieces if it doesn't exist. So just a lot of things like that. In the beginning, I read a lot of JavaScript books. So just, tutorials, books, just asking lots of questions to like other people. That's how I like even if I worked at a small startup when I first started, and some of the tasks I had no idea how to build, like I had to build this PDF generator that would generate a permit that you had to submit to the government. And I was like, how in the world am I gonna do this? And I just asked a bunch of people who had much more experience than me. And I ended up figuring it out. I just did a little at a time and asked a lot of people how they would do it.
Yeah, that's super true. I wouldn't say that our stack changes every quarter, but I did have these worries about switching languages. So in Ada, we learned Ruby, and then HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React. And some of my cohort mates were lucky enough to get jobs at companies that use Ruby on Rails, but most people do not. So I was like, goody, I have to learn something completely new. So the cool thing about Ada is that you have an internship portion built in. So I interned at Nordstrom and then moved to full-time. So when I interned, I was in supply chain, like super back end, no front end at all. And it was Java. And I was like, I do not know this language. So I had time to build a little mini project on my own. I built a mobile app and I used Java. And so then I kind of understood the base principles of how it worked. And then sort of being able to understand how to think like a software engineer makes picking up different languages a lot easier. I'm on the machine learning platform team now, and we use Python and Go primarily, and then JavaScript, React on the front end. So Python is pretty similar to Ruby in a lot of ways. So you can think about sort of the same structures and you can do a lot of the same things. And then Go, Go was weird, but I mean, I know it now, so it's okay. I guess it has some similarities to Java, but I think less about picking up new languages and really just about the tools and technologies that the company is using. And most companies have a set of engineering standards and standard tools that they use for different things. So I would take, like Sam said, a Udemy course on Docker and Kubernetes. So I could learn more about that because it doesn't matter what team I'm on at Nordstrom, we're going to be using Docker and Kubernetes. And learning about Kafka, because no matter what, if you're doing any sort of like streaming or like pub sub situation, you're going to be using Kafka at Nordstrom. So taking Udemy courses about that sort of stuff has been really helpful. And I know because of coronavirus, a lot of companies or a lot of these orgs and software, whatever, continued education companies are offering discounts. I know Pluralsight was free for all of April. So I signed up for Pluralsight. And I was like, cool. So I took as many classes as I could. And then I was like, I'm not paying for it. If you're in Seattle Public Library definitely is partnered with Linda. I don't know about Treehouse, but I'm going to go check because I like to do that. And then I took Coursera courses because in boot camps, we don't really learn a lot about like system engineering or like system design. So I've taken some systems engineering classes. I took a machine learning class because I didn't know anything about machine learning when I started. So taking the time to sort of build your base level and learn about some of the more theoretical things that people may have learned in undergrad really helps pick up new information faster because you understand kind of what's going on behind the scenes.
Awesome. Yeah, I also wanted to just echo what both of you have said already, that once you have learned something, it tends to get easier to pick up things in the past. And even like I will learn something and then forget it a million times. But when I'm learning it, I'm trying to keep my own notes. I've got like Evernote for free, or what is it? It's Evernote. And so I'm taking my screenshots and annotating. Last time we talked a little bit about how to take good screenshots, and I forget all of the different apps, but I love my cloud app because I can just take a screenshot, annotate it, circle pertinent information that I want to really draw my eye to. So that all gets put into my Evernotes, and it's easier to refer back to something because especially on my team, we're constantly integrating like this third-party service and that third-party thing for A/B testing or whatever. So it will be months between the last time that I had to use this thing, and that way I can go back and remind myself how to do it, because that's the feeling of like every quarter maybe something different, except it's not even different. It's the same thing over and over again. And then there's the added bonus that you can help your team and offer that documentation for the team. But what I really was hoping to say was I like to make different analogies of what learning languages are like. And one of them that I feel like a lot of people can probably relate to is like building a house. And I feel like it takes a really long time to make a foundation, but then you're able to start getting like the layout kind of put together, and then you put the walls up faster than what it took to make the foundation. Like there are certain things that the fundamentals take a long time, but then once you've learned a concept, you'll be able to recognize the different applications of that concept in different languages frequently. And then I kind of think about how, yeah, I bet if I were to go build a house, it would take me a really long time to figure out that first house. But then if I wanted to make another house, a lot of it is pretty similar, even though I'm never going to make that exact house again.
Yeah, even within the same language, like even though I've been writing JavaScript for a long time, like I always just go back to old code that I wrote and copy stuff over. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember I did something like this in this like other project I was doing. I'll just copy paste the code. And now I'm better, like I'm constantly getting better. So maybe I'll refactor it. I won't just straight copy and paste it. I'm like, okay, I know how to write this even better now, and I'll make it cleaner. But I at least have the foundation that I already wrote somewhere else, or my other teammate did. Maybe you'll just recognize it. If you look at a lot of code, then you can just like remember, oh yeah, I saw somebody do something like this, and just go copy and paste it and then modify it to do what you want. And just to add two more resources that I really like, Udacity. I've done a ton of Udacity courses. I like Udacity better than Coursera. And if you want like just small foundation computer science, just fundamentals, CS50 on edX is hands down the best course I think there is, that you can do. So it's good to have like a just that beginner like CS fundamentals. It'll probably help it will help in interviews too. I think for junior developers, a lot of times I've been hearing more and more that they'll still ask you some basic CS fundamentals questions. As you get higher up, like for me, I don't get it too often when I did interviews, but they'll ask more system design questions once you get more later on in your career, because they assume you already, if you already been working at all these companies, they already assume you know some basic computer science fundamentals. In the beginning, I think you might get away with not knowing any computer science fundamentals, but I think they might at least ask you like some kind of like binary search question or some basic computer science fundamentals thing.
Next question. When you're looking for a job as a junior dev, what do you look for in the companies you apply to? That's a good question. My main goal in life is not to accumulate wealth and just like have a bunch of money for no reason. So I think about sort of my priorities, which is like generational wealth, being able to support my family, like my mom and my grandma, and doing things that make me feel good, or writing code that is good. So when I look at companies, I look at not only, you know, company culture and blah, 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 but I look at what do you do and how do you like respond when you do something bad, or if people push back on what you're doing. So there are just some companies where I will not work, and that makes it a lot easier to apply. And then I look at if they have any Black people who work there. When we were in Ada, a lot of companies would come and they were like, this is why you should work here. We're so amazing. We have like a wall full of candy. And so I would ask, like, that's super interesting. Thank you for sharing that. How many Black people do you see every day? Because my goal is to be just not the only Black person where I work, because I'm tired of doing it. And if they don't have an answer, like it's okay if the answer is 0 or 1 or 2, but I want to hear, what are you doing to improve diversity and inclusion at your company? Not like some political answer that's like, oh, we know we need to do better on this. And I'm like, okay, how? Like, what concrete things do you have in place? I look at the level of mentorship and support that I would receive. When I'm in interviews and we get to the part where they ask if I have any questions, I ask about career growth and career opportunities, continued education, sort of if they can give me a rundown of what my day-to-day tasks would be like, or like, where would you see me in 3, 6, 9 months, so that I can understand, like, do they have a plan, or do they have like a, you know, a structured support system to allow people to advance through the company, or is that all disorganized? So those are the things that I really try to keep in mind. Let's see. Yeah, it's pretty much all of them.
Yeah, this question is hard. I think it's really subjective. I'm gonna copy and paste the link, because this person that went to Dev Bootcamp made this site called keyvalues.com, and it helps you figure out what companies share the values that are important to you. So yeah, because it's really subjective, like what makes, like, some people they're all about the money, maybe. So they'll just gun and figure out how to game the system, study, crack the coding, interview, just do hundreds of leak code questions, and then get their foot into the door to some FANG company just because that's the fastest way to get a like high salary. But like some people don't care about that at all. Like, some people want good work-life balance. Some people want pairing culture. If you want pairing culture, I worked at Pivotal before. It's 100% pair programming. I don't know how they're doing it now, but yeah, you can. That site keyvalues.com will help you like find companies that matter to you, and it will help you figure out what your values are.
Yeah, I think anytime you can spend some time digging into what matters to you, that's helpful information. Because a lot of times you'll discover what is important to you by being in a situation where you're like, I hate this. And it's a tough situation when that arises, but I guess there is that positive that it's helping you discover in the future what's going to be important for you. I know, I guess also you can find yourself in a situation and realize what has worked really well. And I'm grateful for the teams that I have been on at my current company, because they are far from doing perfectly on diversity and inclusion, but I know that we, like you said, Ari, we have an active plan on ways to get more diversity into our team, at least on the Trunk Club side. And we have managers who are actively holding meetings, having all of us come together and give our insights on how we can improve that. And it's funny that Sam has posted this a couple of times in these meetups, because somebody brought that specific website to one of our meetings to talk about, hey, look at all of these companies have been able to really well articulate what it's like to work at their company. How can we do that too? So obviously there's a sense of inclusion, and I think that has been really valuable for me. I personally, like other things that I'm looking for personally, I like this work from home stuff, and in my next move, I will look for something that continues to allow me this flexibility. And I think I've noticed, if it's something that doesn't drive you crazy, there's fewer politics are happening, fewer of that like annoying interpersonal. I didn't notice it so much, but I've heard other people at my company talk about like, oh yeah, that drama that used to be happening from day to day when we were all in the office, it's not coming up so much. So that might be something to consider also.
Yeah, and also I got an unpopular opinion. I think that I think as a junior developer, you should take whatever job you can get, as long as there's no red flags when you go into the interview. Just gut feeling, trust your gut. Like if something seems off, then maybe don't take it if you get the offer. But I feel like just take it. Like if it doesn't work out, you can just quit. I've quit a company after 1 week before, just because I was like, this is crazy. I'm not gonna work here. But if somebody's making you an offer, like, I mean, might as well get some experience. You can always just quit. That's my opinion, at least.
What sort of stuff were you seeing? Is that stuff you feel okay talking about?
Yeah, it wasn't. It was more the way they were building the software. I didn't like it. Everybody like pushed to master. There was basically no automated tests, like very few. So somebody new coming in there, for one thing, we had to be full stack, which was like Python on the back end, which I didn't have a lot of experience with. They're using Django. And then front end was just like spaghetti jQuery code. And you also had to do Android and iOS development because it was a startup. So like a lot of times in startup, you gotta be like generalist because they don't have a lot of resources. And when I was in there, so it was like I was like, how do I build stuff? There's no tests. Everybody's just pushing the master. They don't want to do code reviews. Like I was like, this is insanity. So that was, I didn't like that. And then yeah, and the all hands meeting, once I got in, it didn't seem as rosy as it was when the co-founders pitched it to me before I started working there. I like lost confidence that they would actually succeed, but they're still going, so they beat my expectations. I don't want to name the company though.
Very understandable and noble. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't put it on my LinkedIn. I also gave them back their signing bonus where I didn't take it. They messed up, as a lot of small companies do. Usually there's a clause that you're supposed to give back your signing bonus if you leave like before a year. They didn't put that clause in it. So I was supposed to get a $10,000 signing bonus. And I just told the co-founder to keep it. I'm like, I didn't earn it. I was here for a week. So.
Oh, you're nicer than me.
Well, I mean, I want to be on good terms with them, and they were nice people. Like, I didn't quit because I hated the people working there. I just didn't like their processes. Like, and yeah.
All right. So, when do you know you're no longer a junior developer? When do you know you're a mid-level developer? That's also a good question. All of these are good questions. So, unless you're at the company that Sam was working for that shall not be named, a lot of companies have leveling charts and leveling guides. And something I did in my first meeting with my manager is I had sort of the printout. I'm an SE1. So SE2, like you have to be able to do a certain set of things. And I said, I want to be in like progress for a promotion by December. And what I would like is that the tasks and the projects that I'm doing are aligning with these goals. So it was like, and my manager said, it's my job to get you there. So we would work together and I would say, oh, I really want to work on like scoping out a feature, designing a feature independently. And so I would get that sort of work. And that's been really, really helpful. And it's nice when you have a leveling guide because you can say, I've done all of these things and I've kept receipts for all of them. So I can prove exactly when I've done them. Something I do for myself, I did it during my internship, I do it now, is that I write down some of the things that I've owned. Like if it's a big story or if I've done something cool or if I wrote an article, I just plop it in there. I make a table with the engineering standards on one side, and then I just drop a little summary of the things that I've done that meet those. And if I see there's an area where I'm like, ooh, I haven't done that yet, I'm just like, hello. So as you can see, I would like to do this now. And that's been going really, really, really well. I would say, I think when I worked at Amazon, this was a non-tech role, but the philosophy there was that if you want to get a promotion, you kind of have to be doing the work of the next level before you're even there, like while you're still in that lower position. And I would say that that's probably true. Like I wouldn't pull double duty. Like I'm only getting paid to be like a software engineer 1, so I'm not gonna, go out of my way too much to do the work of 2 people. But yeah, I definitely try to extend myself and push myself and say, I want to design this, I want to do this, and slowly make that more and more of what I'm regularly doing. So then when they have these promotion meetings and conversations, it's easy to say like, I'm already here, I'm already doing it.
Yeah, that's similar to how Lyft is too. I think it's kind of expected that you're doing the next level work already to demonstrate that you can do it. So yeah, bigger companies will usually have internal documentation on what is expected of each level at the company. I'm not sure. Maybe there's some sites that document it. I don't know if levels.fyi documents that. But yeah, you can try Google. I don't know any off the top of my head. Maybe levels.fyi will start adding it. Right now, they focus just on compensation. It seems like. So you can go to levels.fyi and see the crazy compensation that Silicon Valley companies are paying. Even to junior engineers it's insanity to me. The salaries, but it's called levels.fyi and it shows you each level. So I would assume they start adding information about each level. But yeah, generally you just know when you get a promotion and your job title changes.
Yeah, I've also been really grateful for the internal documents that my company has. And that was actually feedback that I gave to management for a while. It seemed like some of the requirements were, I don't know, subject to someone's opinion, I guess. And they were able to make things much more clear and like X amount of time, you should be able to work on your own. Or I know one of the things that I'm working on is just being able to look at some piece of work in front of me and know how long that might take. Doesn't mean I'm not allowed to reach out for help, but that's one of the pieces of criteria that they're seeing as being at that mid-level. So I want to, talk to my manager and see what kind of information I can publish, because I do think that would be really helpful for a lot of people to know. Cool. So,
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just like, there's silence. Let me feel it. That's what
so what is onboarding like for a junior developer? Did you feel prepared when you first started as a junior dev, especially as a bootcamp grad? I did not feel prepared. I think there was just
I didn't either.
so much being thrown at me all at once. There were so many things to learn about the company. There were so many things to learn about. Sure, I knew a lot of the languages when, like, my dev bootcamp really focused a lot on Ruby. And that is what our backend is written in at the company. So there's still so much about testing and setting up tests. We didn't spend a lot of time setting up tests. I, for a very long time, just felt like I was drowning. And I feel like our onboarding experience was pretty well developed at my company too. So I know if some companies haven't had a chance to really develop their onboarding, it's going to be even more of a struggle there. I know I was surprised. I think the first maybe 2 weeks, pretty much all I did was try to get my computer set up so that I would potentially be able to make PRs and shadow other people. And that really took a lot of the pressure off. But I still, even after that, like, I had a better idea of how the company was working, but it was still like, well, now what?
That's super fair. I had like a completely different onboarding experience. My team is like, they're so sweet, they're so nice, but there was no onboarding to speak of. But rather, and it was like frustrating for me, but it was also a really good opportunity to really produce something of value right away. So when I started, my onboarding was, read through our external documentation and try to like do what it says. And it was so confusing to get through that I was like, I can't even do it. So the first thing that I did, I think the second day I was on my team, I had an MR where I was just like, I fixed our documentation. Not all of it, because that long story. I just like organized it and cleaned it up and made it like easier to find things. And that was the first thing I did. And then I was able to create a new member onboarding doc and say, these are the things you need to download. These are the things you need to install. It took me like 2 months to figure all this stuff out. People kind of just give you little breadcrumbs and they're like, oh, you need that. Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you. So now every time we onboard somebody, that process takes half a day instead of like 2 months. And then I wrote a Medium article for Nordstrom's Medium called So Your New Team Has Bad Documentation. A little spicy, but it was true. And it was basically like, here's what you do. If your team does have bad documentation, you can take it as an opportunity to recreate it, figure out what these problems are, and then work with each other to create something that's actually useful for you and for your customers. So I worked with data science to like redo all that documentation and yada, yada, yada. It's so much easier now. Everybody can read it. There's little icons. Did I feel prepared? No. Imposter syndrome was my constant companion. I was on LinkedIn. I was just like messing around one day and I was like, let me look at my coworkers. And then I realized they all had like masters or like 2 masters. And I was like, oh no. I was like, oh my gosh, they've never made me feel, any type of way about, I have a bachelor's, but it's in something completely unrelated. And they're really, really helpful. So a lot of the lack of preparedness that I felt was completely mental, and it was me sort of projecting how I felt about myself onto the situation. They know that it takes a long time to learn things. And so much of being on a team is less about, knowing how to do everything in Java. It's about how do we use these specific technologies to do what we need to do. And there's no way to learn that until you actually do it. Like you can take I took as many Udemy courses on Docker and Kubernetes as I could, but it doesn't really matter until you're actually sitting there doing it and you're saying, oh, how do I containerize this? Like, ooh, I wonder what that means. So I feel like preparedness is like, if you're ready to like do the work, you're prepared. And if people are making you feel like you're supposed to be pushing out code like your second day, they are wrong. So unless you're like a senior engineer, but as a junior engineer, no, you're supposed to know where the bathroom is and you're supposed to know how to turn your computer on. And that's all I knew when I started.
Gotta know where to get coffee too.
Yes. They were like, welcome. I was like, where's the coffee? Where's the bathroom?
Yeah, I'll judge companies based on their coffee too. So I'll not take your job if they don't have good coffee. But I started my journey at a tiny startup, so there was no onboarding. You're just thrown in the fire. But I was used to that because that's what they did to us at the boot camp. At their boot camp, you learn by them throwing you into the fire and driving you to the point of almost breaking, but not breaking. They knew where like the ceiling was because they felt like that's the optimum learning place when you're like pushed really hard enough right before your breaking point. So just ask a lot of questions. That's what I did. If you end up at a smaller company, because bigger companies, they probably have good onboarding. Lyft had like a whole week of onboarding for me. Just every single new employee learns about all the Lyft infrastructure. But smaller companies or contract work and stuff, like you're not gonna have much onboarding. So the only way to learn is ask a lot of questions to people you're working with. Ask a lot of questions to friends or any of your networks you have, other people. If you went to a boot camp, go in your boot camp groups, whatever kind of social media thing you guys have going on, and just ask them.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm curious if either of you have ever gotten pushback, like you've been asking too many questions.
No.
That would be a red flag to me.
I feel like that would be a red flag. Yeah.
If anything, people are like, please ask more questions. Like people love answering them, and it only makes the team better if they know. They have no reason to not tell you something unless they're mean. So you want to work there anyway.
Okay, sorry. I feel like I cut you off, Sam. Continue.
No, that's it. That's all I had to add on that.
That was been the transition from working in the office to working from home? Do you see yourself doing it permanently if your employer allows? The transition was, I guess I would say it was difficult. I think it's hard to separate the difficulty into, is it the transition or is it like the fear of death of coronavirus? Like, what is it? I don't know. But it was hard for me when I first started because I feel like I'm almost more available when I'm at home. It's like constant availability because people can always ping you on Slack, and like you're always in these video conferences and people know you're not going anywhere because everything is closed. So they're like, feel like, oh, I can just be like, ask this and do this. And like, we can push our like working hours. So like we could have a meeting at 4:54 p.m. Who does that? So I really had to figure out like my little bubble and like how I was going to work in this environment. So I'm like became really strict with myself about having like a clean workspace, a dedicated workspace, like set hours, not eating at my desk, getting dressed for work every day so that I didn't feel like I was just, everything was all at once. And like my work was my life and my life was my work, because I don't live to work as a general rule. So I was like, I don't want to do it now either. I would see myself doing it permanently. I think kind of like what Brady was saying, a lot of the like interpersonal stuff and the politics and like the microaggressions are way lessened because I don't have to see anybody. And so that part for me is really, really enjoyable. I don't know if for the things I'm, interviewing for now, if I could ever be fully remote, but I would really enjoy the opportunity to work from home for like 2-3 days a week. That was it. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm still struggling with it a little while. I mean, it's nice because I can just wake up and kind of just work whenever I want, besides like going to meetings or doing stand up. But I have a hard time separating work and normal life now. I end up working till like midnight sometimes. I'll just like, because then I get distracted by like either like news or something in the daytime, and then I feel like I didn't do enough work, so I feel guilty, and then I just keep working, and then it's like midnight, and then sometimes I did some work this morning. I'm struggling with separating work and normal life. But that being said, I'm probably still gonna work from home even if they open the office, just because I catch the bus, I take lifts, I carpool to work in the morning. I live in the East Bay and I go to San Francisco for Lyft's office. So I'm probably going to work from home until there's a vaccine available. I think, just even though the probability of low of getting sick, I don't want to take any chances. I'd rather just be safe. So even though I prefer going to the office, because my team has always been pretty flexible. Like I could always probably just work from home. But I like going to the office because of the chance encounters with people like that come up. It's easier to like whiteboard stuff, like if there's something difficult to work on, or and they have good coffee. Lyft has Phil's coffee at the office.
That is good.
Yeah, it is. And they had good lunch and dinner. Dinner's canceled permanently now, though. And lunch, I think, is changed to box lunch, so it's probably not as good as it was. So the incentives are going down for going to the office, but yeah, I'm still learning how to deal with this whole work from home. But also, it's like lockdown work from home, so it's like not normal.
Right, I can't even go hang out with my friends. I was like, I'm just
yeah.
Nordstrom having no perks to speak of makes it easier to not want to go back. Because when I was interning on my Keurig, and then they sent out an email that was like, "We're not buying pods anymore. You can bring your own." I was like, well, I never need to come here again because that's the only perk. So that made it easier. But yeah, I totally feel you about wanting to work, like feeling like I have to work or feeling like I'm not being as productive. And this was a hard conversation to have, but I had it with my manager where I was like, productivity in this time can mean like, it means completely different thing than what it meant in December when I first started working on this team. I saw this thing on Instagram that was like, you're not only working from home, you're at home during a pandemic trying to get work done. So that's the way I think of it. Like the bar for myself, I'm not gonna say the bar for myself is a lot lower, but I'm becoming more accepting of like the small things that I do every day. And then I feel like in the end, it has made me more productive because I don't feel this weird pressure. So I talked to my manager and I was like, I just feel stupid and unproductive, like verbatim is what I said. And he was like, there's this undercurrent of stress that's made our tolerance for things so much lower. And so we just sort of have to be open about that, like as a team. And so we've totally had these conversations about it. And he was like, I just don't want y'all to feel like you have to be working nights and weekends. And it's like, the whole company is going through this huge transformation. So it's a bit unfair to expect that people are going to be pushing out this insane amount of work, especially because people have kids. I don't have kids. I'm just like stressed. But people have kids and they have other parts of their life that are keeping them from doing this. So there are days where like my big thing is like I wrote up the doc and I'm like, okay, did it need to be done? Yes. And it's done. And now I'm done because I worked all day and I was like, doesn't matter how much I do every day, there will always be something to do. So I'm trying not to push myself to get it all done in one day because it's like infinite. It's an infinite amount of work.
Absolutely. Yeah. I echo everything that you both just said. I've noticed, so I used to live in the city and I was like a 10-minute walk from the office from where I was working. But I was in a high rise and that just didn't seem like the ideal place to be living and continuously going in and out and going for groceries. So I made the decision to come out to the suburbs. I'm staying with my parents. And so luckily I'm in a spot where it makes it really convenient to go outside, like for lunch or before I work in the morning. And I can tell such a big difference on my days when, like, if I am up late and then wake up late and don't get to go outside in the morning for my walk, just to like kind of mimic that feeling of what I would do in the morning going to work. When I go out, it's always such a good day. If I just like roll out of bed and start my meeting, that I got a couple extra minutes of sleep, but it makes a big difference. My day doesn't feel as good. So I'm learning those tricks of like what makes my day feel better, and being outside and being able to go for a walk is a big one. I am so lucky that my team, both of the teams that I've worked on within Trunk Club, are very protective of not only their own free time, but everybody else's free time. And so if it comes up in conversation, like, well, I'll look at this later tonight and try to figure this thing out, I've literally gotten pushback from people like, as long as it's what sounds like a fun evening to you, I'm not going to say anything, but don't feel like you have to do this just because you feel like you have to get this done. Exactly what Ari was just saying. Like, there was always going to be stuff to do. It's helped me that I'm working on a few different projects that I'm always excited to get to. This is kind of one of them. But just in general, like helping devs who are looking for jobs figure out how to get their jobs is one of the things that I've been working on outside of my working hours. So that's helped me, once I get to a kind of stopping point on the project that I'm working on, to just close my computer, switch computers, maybe go for that walk or something. It has kind of forced me to really compartmentalize my workday from everything else.
That's a really good segue into the next question. How important is it working on your independent projects, and how do you manage to find the time for it? Yeah, basically what Brady said. I don't work on only work during the day. I sit down in the morning and I'm like, I split everything I need to do into easy, medium, hard. Easy is like load the dishwasher. Medium, sometimes it's just my job. Sometimes it's the vlog I work on. Sometimes it's some of my volunteer projects. Or, those are all switched around with hard. And then I start with the hard one because that's what you're supposed to do, which sucks. But yeah, if I get kind of stuck or I hit a wall with something I'm working on for work, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go like clean the bathroom and come back, or I'm gonna make a blog post, or I'm gonna post on LinkedIn. And it gives my brain a chance to sort of calm down and reset. And so I think integrating those independent projects into my everyday has been really helpful. Before coronavirus, I would just actually I would do during lunch, I would like listen to my Coursera stuff and eat at the same time. Or I would just do it at home or on the weekends. The weekends were my like Coursera homework time. But now that we're all at home and work is life and life is work, it's a lot easier to integrate all of that stuff. And that makes it a lot better too, because then when you finish your day, maybe you finish at 5, maybe you finish at 6, you don't feel like, oh, I got to go back to work and do like a project or do something else. Something that on my team is really important is this idea of continued learning. So taking like an hour a day to learn something new. It doesn't have to be something new that's going to make Nordstrom money. It can be something new that you've always wanted to learn or something that you think is going to help you grow. So that's been really helpful for me.
Yeah.
Sorry, really quick. If Ari wants to, I would say go ahead and post your website and any articles or anything.
Oh yeah, I'll put it over here.
Go for it, Sam.
Yeah, I think it is important to work on your own projects, but try to find stuff that you're really interested in, because then it's your hobby. You just work on it. If it's like building an app is as an independent project rather than content creation like we're doing now. I have both hobbies, so starting this meetup and helping other devs. I mentor at Lambda School. I have an open source project I work on. I haven't made any commits in months just because I've been busy with all kinds of other stuff. But I still answer all the issues that people raise. I just don't fix all of them. Somebody can make a pull request if you're looking for open source projects to work on. I have a bunch of issues on my project. I'll link it later. So by working on something you really enjoy, you learn a lot because you enjoy working on it, and then you have to figure out how to do all kinds of stuff. You learn a lot more when you're doing that, building a real world like project, than just doing Treehouse or watching front-end masters. Front-end masters and stuff is good. It's just more passive though, so you don't learn it doesn't stick as well, I think. It might help you as you're going into like interviews, because you just watch Will Sentence describe how JavaScript works on JavaScript, the hard parts, and it's fresh because you watched it the day before you went into the interview. But it doesn't stick as well as when you actually build something. And like I said before, I always go back and copy paste code that I did before. If you're working on your own project, you'll do that a lot probably because you wrote a bunch of stuff like, how do I upload a picture, or just any kind of, how do I generate a PDF using React? It might, all those kind of things might come up just from you needed it in your personal pet project that you're making. So it can be either personal, that also helps demonstrate that you can build stuff, which is important for companies to want to interview you if you have stuff to show. And it doesn't have to be your own project. You can work on open source projects as well. So if you like a library or you like a certain company, you can go look what open source projects they have. Like Microsoft has a ton of open source projects now. If you want to work in Microsoft, go look. Maybe there's like some beginner task that you can do. Just browse through issues on GitHub. A lot of times they have labels for like good first issue. Sometimes it's just updating the docs. Just clone the project, update the docs, make a pull request. Your name is in the repo. They notice that kind of stuff. And it just helps you get started. Now you have the project on your computer. You learned how to make a pull request. You learned how to communicate with the people in the PR. Even if you didn't write code and you just fixed the typo, you got your first foot in the door. So yeah, working on side projects is especially good for when you're trying to get your first job. It just demonstrates that you can do what needs to be done.
Yeah, I think it gives a great picture for anyone whoever might be looking for a job in the future, but specifically if you are trying to get your first job, I would say, yeah, so many people do just go take the courses and go through. There are so many great resources. Like, yeah, I do think people, if they can afford it, front end masters is wonderful if they're trying to be a front end dev, or free code camp, I think, is a great place, especially if you are trying to pick up something new. I like how it kind of holds your hand, but still gives you space to play around with things. But open source has so many. Well, okay, the question was independent projects. Yeah, you're going to have to be thinking problems through in a way that you wouldn't on a course. And then going back into, I think, what Sam was saying earlier, not only is it really impressive when a candidate comes in for an interview and is really excited about your company, but I know I always feel good about a candidate who just shows that they are really passionate about what they're working on. And an independent project, you're going to have to be excited about it, right? I can't picture somebody working on an independent project that they're not really excited about in some way. And being able to talk more about that.
And if you're super excited about it, you're gonna find time to do it because that's what you want to do. So,
and don't feel like you have to wait for your project to be done to tell people about it. Like, that's one of the great things about LinkedIn. You can say, oh, here's what I'm working on. And you put the right hashtags in there, and people love to see that. And people, like recruiters and stuff, and whoever is about to interview you, they go look at your LinkedIn and they can see like, oh, I'm working on this, or like some of the struggles I've had with this project, or this, and this, but what I've learned is blah, 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 blah. Like, treat LinkedIn sort of like your you don't have to tell all your feelings, but I post like, oh, I made a new blog post, or, oh, I'm working on this side project and it's been really fun.
Yeah, and just post anything.
Right. Yeah. Just go on there, and it helps you be more visible.
Yeah. Even if you're working on a project, you can do the 100 days of code challenge doing your project. So, I don't know if people know, I can post a link. I post it every week. I really like that challenge. You pretty much just commit 1 hour a day to just working on stuff, and then you just post about it. And yeah, so you can just pick a project and then start working on it. And then every day you committed to work on it for an hour. So you build your skills, you build your network, you learn how to use tools, because you got to learn how to like share code snippets and make GIFs that you can share with people. So if you do 100 days of code, I do suggest like in the Slack, I shared a tool for how to share code snippets. It will make it like really nice and turn it into an image that's easily shareable on social media. So you can share it on Twitter, LinkedIn. And like some things just go viral. You never know what you're gonna post. Like some people will just post this little thing on CSS that's like one line of code, and like 1,000 people like it. Like you never know. You never know what people is gonna like. Don't overthink what you're gonna post on social media. Just share it. You never know what's gonna connect with people. Anything you think that was cool to you, share it with other people. Any problems you had, share it with other people.
There's no more questions. Boo.
We can, anybody got live questions? You can turn on your mic and just ask questions live if you want. Otherwise, I got a question for you, Ari.
Yeah.
How did you end up going into machine learning? Like, was that your focus, or you ended up there like
completely
rather than like web development?
Completely serendipitous. I I got my undergraduate degree from Penn in bioethics. So when I first moved to Seattle, I worked at a nonprofit. It was a cornea bank, and I was like, this is the most relevant job I will ever have related to this. I'm not going to say it's a useless major, because it's not anymore, but at the time it kind of was. According to my mom, I'm fine. So I worked at the cornea bank, and then I worked at Amazon in legal. And so I was really my path I thought was going to be this like legal, ethical, sort of maybe program management situation. But then I got into Ada and started working on just writing code. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. I wonder how I can write ethical code. I wonder where ethics is like a conversation in code or software development. I wonder where that comes up. And so I interned on 2 supply chain teams, and the second team I was on didn't have headcount. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I have to apply for like all these different jobs. And my manager found my resume. I think someone from HR was like, oh, here, this person is desperate. And so we had like a 20-minute conversation, and then he gave me an offer. I didn't have to interview or anything, which was amazing. And I hadn't really considered machine learning at all because, yeah, I had no idea. There's like linear algebra and calculus. And I was like, don't know either of those. So thank you for your consideration. But once I joined the team, I realized, oh, I really need to understand more about this. And right now, the way my manager describes what we're doing is like DevOps for machine learning. So I don't necessarily have to write the algorithms myself, but I need to know what they're doing. I need to know how to clean data or manipulate the data. And I need to understand like what features are, like the different kinds of buzzwords that a data scientist is going to use, which is why I took that machine learning course on Coursera. And so since I've been on the team, I'm like, okay, yeah, I think machine learning AI is really, really where I want to be. I really want to be part of these conversations around the intersection of ethics and tech. So now I keep that in mind when I'm applying for new jobs. So like the job that I just got at Microsoft is like also sort of DevOps, but still ML adjacent. And I'm like, that's really what I want to learn. That's really important to me. And I made that clear in my interview. I was like, this is what I want, intersection of this and this. And I want to be sure that that's a path that I can take like in this role. So I knew that already. And then my interview next week at Google is on like their Python ML team. So working with like a lot of their machine learning tools and services. And I was like, what is important for me is this intersection of this and this. So like, we don't even have to continue this conversation if like, that's not something that I can do. So landing on this team like is completely, I don't even understand how it happened, but it worked out so well because I feel like I've really found like my little niche. Niche? Guess it depends. I'm gonna pretend I'm French. My niche.
Would that be considered more like data engineering?
I don't even know. I consider myself more like, I just consider myself a full stack engineer because we have to work on the DevOps, we have to work on the back end for the platform, we have to work on the front end, like UI stuff. I wouldn't consider myself a machine learning engineer because I'm not the one implementing the algorithms or anything like that.
And what is Ada? I'm not familiar with Ada.
I was just like, blah, didn't mention it. So Ada Development Academy is a boot camp here in Seattle for women and gender diverse people. It's a nonprofit and it's free, which is like really what makes it amazing. And so it's 11 months. So you have 6 months of class. Well, technically 5 months of class, a month for a capstone project. And that's when I built my mobile app. And then 5 months of an internship that's baked in. So during Ada, there's all the companies come in and give presentations like, you should totally work here, like blah, 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 blah. And then we have an interview week where you interview with 6 of those companies. And then eventually you get placed there and then you do your internship. And I think something like 83% of people end up staying with their internship company. But like some people apply at other places and go somewhere else. Some people just, don't get offers from their internship companies for whatever reason. But I think the internship is really the best part of Ada. There are a lot of places where it's really hard to get your foot in the door if you don't have concrete work experience at a company. I'm not going to say a tech company because I don't really consider Nordstrom a tech company. But
every company is a tech company now.
I guess you're right.
Or they will be.
Yeah, that's true. They will be.
That's why you shouldn't give up because there's going to be extremely high demand for developers, even though it may be slowing down right now.
It's going to pick up. Yeah, the future.
This is over.
Yeah.
The demand's going to continue skyrocketing. At least
I have some friends who are recruiters, and they were talking about how before coronavirus, they would get like maybe 6 jobs a week or so to fill. in the tech space that they were focusing in, and now it's starting to pick up again. And obviously, it's a little bit lower than what it had been, but it's like 2, maybe 3 a week, and they see the trend that it's starting to pick up. So I just wanted to share that there is some good news out there.
Yeah.